Look at this image burning across the internet right now. The once defiant strongman Nicolás Maduro, blindfolded, hands bound aboard a U.S. warship. Hours ago, he ruled Venezuela. Tonight, he's a prisoner. And President Trump says the United States now controls Venezuela's future and its oceans of oil. How did this happen, and how will it affect the world and the oil market? The operation, dubbed Operation Absolute Resolve, began late Friday night when President Trump gave the final go-ahead from Mar-a-Lago. Over 150 U.S. aircraft, including fighter jets and helicopters, launched from multiple bases to disable Venezuelan air defenses. Special forces, including Delta Force operators, then raided Maduro's fortified compound in Caracas. According to Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane, helicopters landed at the compound around 2:01 a.m. local time Saturday. Maduro and his wife surrendered after attempting to reach a steel-enforced safe room. They were quickly taken into custody, blindfolded, and flown to the USS Iwo Jima in the Caribbean before being transferred to New York. As usual, when something happens, President Trump takes it to Truth Social. So he posted this photo on Truth Social, showing Maduro in gray sweatpants and blackout goggles aboard the ship. No U.S. casualties were reported, though Venezuelan sources claim dozens killed, including civilians, in the strikes on sites like Fuerte Tiuna military base and La Carlota air base. Trump monitored the raid live from a secured room at his Florida resort, alongside aides including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Planning involved months of rehearsals, including a mock replica of Maduro's residence, and intelligence from CIA sources inside Venezuela. Trump said that the United States of America successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolás Maduro, who has been with his wife.
At my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night, but captured along with his wife, Cilia Flores, both of whom now face American justice.
Both were captured and flown out of the country. Trump also said that the U.S. is going to run the country until such time as they can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years.
Trump also said they have the greatest oil companies in the world and are going to be very much involved in it and have total access to the oil.
We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country.
Trump warned of a possible second strike if Venezuela's interim government doesn't cooperate, and hinted at similar actions against neighbors involved in drug trafficking.
And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually.
Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has assumed interim leadership, initially condemning the raid as a kidnapping, but later calling for dialogue and balanced relations with the United States. The streets in Caracas remain quiet but tense, with some protests and celebrations among opposition supporters. Global reactions are sharply divided. China accused the U.S. of acting as world judge and demanded Maduro's immediate release. Russia, Cuba, and Iran condemned the action as a sovereignty violation. The UN called it a dangerous precedent. Praise came from some Republican lawmakers, Argentine President Javier Milei, and Venezuelan diaspora communities celebrating in U.S. cities. Brazilian and Mexican leaders expressed concern over regional stability.
Maduro faces 2020 federal charges in New York for narco-terrorism, cocaine importation, and corruption. Attorney General Pam Bondi unsealed an updated indictment alleging Maduro turned Venezuela into a narco state. His lawyers are expected to argue immunity as a head of state. Maduro is detained at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. His first court appearance is scheduled for Monday at noon in Manhattan Federal Court. This marks the most direct U.S. intervention in Latin America since the 1989 Panama invasion.
At the heart of this crisis is Venezuela's oil. Venezuela has more oil than any other country, over 300 billion barrels. This is even more than Saudi Arabia. Even though they have a lot of oil, they aren't producing much. Because of bad management and broken equipment, they only make about 1 million barrels a day. In the past, they made more than 3 times that amount. President Trump wants American companies to spend billions of dollars to fix Venezuela's oil fields and pipelines. Experts think that if the country becomes stable, it could eventually produce 2 to 3 million barrels a day. This extra oil would increase the world's supply and could lead to lower gas prices in the long run. Right now, oil prices haven't changed much. The price is around $60 per barrel. There is enough oil in the world right now, so there hasn't been a big price jump. The consequences of the attack on Venezuela extend far beyond oil and Venezuela itself. This could reshape the world. First, the energy markets and economy. Increased Venezuelan supply could reduce dependence on Middle Eastern and Russian oil, potentially lowering global energy costs, easing inflation pressures, and benefiting consumers in Europe and Asia. On the other hand, prolonged chaos could temporarily drive prices up, straining economies already recovering from recent shocks. Secondly, this move shows that the U.S. is willing to use its military to change governments in its own neighborhood. This might make countries that don't like the U.S., such as Russia, China, and Iran, work together even more to try to stop American influence. This event also can have an effect on the region. If Venezuela becomes stable and safe, people might stop fleeing the country, so there will be fewer refugees. This would help neighbors like Colombia and Brazil, as well as the U.S. border. If the situation gets worse, there will be danger of violence. It could cause a new wave of refugees and more drug trafficking. Fourth, the global norms and international law. Critics warn this sets a precedent for unilateral regime change, weakening international law and the UN system. They feel that the U.S. is not setting a good example. However, supporters believe this is stopping crime. They believe that the U.S. had to act to stop a humanitarian disaster and end drug smuggling. Lastly, it may have an effect on the U.S. domestic politics. If the mission is seen as a success, it will make President Trump look like a strong leader. If it fails, or if it costs too much money and lives, it could hurt his reputation. In short, this single operation could alter energy security, migration patterns, diplomatic alliances, and the rules of international intervention for years to come. This situation is about more than just a legal trial. It makes us ask big questions about how the world works today. Who is really in charge, and who should be allowed to lead? Who gets to control a country's wealth, like its oil? Does a country have the right to rule itself, or can a stronger country step in and take over if they think the leader is a criminal? In short, it makes us think about what is fair when powerful nations and valuable resources are involved.
We are on a mission to reach 10,000 subscribers here on First Stream News. Every single subscription helps us grow and deliver even more breaking news and deeper analysis to you. Please help us out by hitting that subscribe button.